Hi, everybody. Dan Illman, Ashley Mailloux, taking a look at the first of two graded stakes races scheduled for turf at Santa Anita on Saturday. They're running them early in the card to try to beat the rain. Race number one's the Joe Hernandez. We're going down the hill at about 6.5 furlongs. $200,000 is the purse. It's an overflow field, Ashley, and you have a little bit of everything. Horses dropping in class, dropping in distance, trying turf for the first time, and horses that are still trying to find their way at the stakes level.
Yeah, I think from a betting perspective, it sort of makes for an open race here in terms of what I think the off odds will be. And if you're looking at the exotics, I think you could get a decent payout. But to me, there's probably 3 or 4 horses, assuming it stays on the turf, that stick out and at least, can kind of make their case off their recent performances. And then there is the big question, if it does move surfaces, you have some really nice horses that have fared well on the dirt. So it's a little bit of a wild card at this point in the week, Dan.
Timeform US's Pace Projector has the two pace protagonists, horses that have mostly spent their careers on dirt. The 5 Peaceful Waters will try turf for the first time. Forbidden Kingdom has raced once on turf, but is a pretty good sprinter on dirt. This Pace Projector will change in your past performances if the race is washed off. You know the 2 Balnikov is going to kick. That's what he does every race.
It doesn't matter the distance. He's a hard, true closer. We saw that even 2 starts back when he did try 6.5 furlongs in the Eddie D. And I agree with this. I think the 2 dirt runners are going to have to, show that they can handle the turf. But Forbidden Kingdom has a lot of early foot. And as we've mentioned, Peaceful Waters does too.
Lucky Score, the number 1, is part of an uncoupled Marquesi entry of just hard-hitting, solid performers. Lucky Score was third in the Woodbine Mile 3 back, and then he turned back to 6 furlongs in this race, the Grade 2 Nearctic over yielding ground. He is last on the rail at the quarter pole, but he flies home with a furious finish, and he's going to finish a good second behind a good turf sprinter in Big Invasion.
Just watching this race unfold, it's probably the craziest race I saw at Woodbine all year in terms of horses scrambling. There's a lot of late movement from several runners in here, but I thought Lucky Score raced very well. Super excited to see him cut back in distance. He did go to the Breeders' Cup Mile where he finished 7th, beaten by just over 2 lengths. And I think for him, I think some of his best races have been at these shorter distances. So I have no issues with him on the downhill. I know he's got 1 try at Santa Anita on the turf course. We mentioned it wasn't good, but this is a different ball game at 6.5.
And he appears to be coming into this race in good form, not only in the Woodbine Mile and the Nearctic. You watch his Breeders' Cup Mile, he isn't going to win with a perfect trip, but I still think he could be closer because he was in very, very tight in between horses in the final 16th of a mile. Balnikov is the number 2, and as Ashley correctly mentioned early on, it doesn't matter the distance, whether it's 6.5, whether it's a mile, he's going to run at the end. He has a strong kick, and here's his last race. The Seabiscuit going 1 mile and a 16th. He's last on the rail, turning into the stretch. He's going to alter course for clearance to the outside, and once he is clear at the 8th pole, he flies home to finish 3rd behind 2 very good horses.
The big thing with him, I know he's not necessarily always there, but he does do this every single time. He tries and he really runs very strong. And I think looking at his connections, Phil D'Amato's been on a roll, as we know, sort of all year long, and even the last couple of weeks, regardless of the track that he's been out in California. And to me, there's just a sign here. They want to try him shorter again. And I think that's because they see something in the way that he's training, the way that he's going, that they might think he's going to get the setup. And luckily in this race, he's got a big field. The pace should be hot, and that's what he's going to need.
Just going to need a trip from back there, as he's going to have to probably work his way through or around a lot of horses, but he'll run at the end. Daniel's Majestic up next, 4th in the Stormy Liberal last time. That race was going 5/8 of a mile at Del Mar. You go back to his 2 prior performances, and maybe all of a sudden we can say this horse is a downhill specialist. I'm willing to throw that last race out, but he will have to improve stepping up against tougher horses.
Yeah, the waters are deeper. I'm going to, draw a line through that race as well at Del Mar. I think if you just look at the way he ran, he was really flat in the stretch, and that's not necessarily what we usually see from him. Even in those races, 4 and 5 starts back at Del Mar, going a shorter distance of ground, he was still closing. So I wonder if he just was a little off. To me, him coming back in the same month to get this start is a positive sign. And as long as he can step up, he could maybe have a shot in here. But we've talked about it, Dan. This is a wide open race. There's a lot of horses either trying something new or they're going to get the class test.
The 4 is Forbidden Kingdom, and this horse does have class, a multiple graded stakes winner on the dirt, but will that class translate to the grass? He's only raced once previously on turf, way back in his second lifetime start in 2021. I guess he ran okay that day. The problem with Forbidden Kingdom has been he's been ouchy throughout his career, and now he's got to return off a long layoff.
The one turf race doesn't bother me. I know he runs third in the Speakeasy. His buyers, though, is pretty low. It's just so early in his career. I do think he's a different horse now, but you've sort of pointed it out. He does not like to win a lot. It's been a long time since he's found the winner's circle. With that said, I do find it interesting to see him back on the grass. He's got a really nice workout on Christmas Eve. And I think for me, when I look at him, I'd be willing to use him for a piece here. I do think he is a little risky to use, say, on the top spot if it's on the turf.
If the race is washed off, the 5 Peaceful Waters is going to be a very strong contender because he's raced exclusively on dirt in his career and he's run some fast races. That being said, he also has a very strong turf pedigree. His dam won on turf. His second dam is Soaring Softly, who won the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare turf. Maybe this is what Peaceful Waters has been waiting for his whole life.
Hey, they're going to give him a shot, and I think we'll see him regardless of the surface, right? I think his dirt races certainly put him in the mix. I mean, go back to the race at Keeneland, 3 starts back, where he's got to be game to the wire. He gets the job done. I think when he first comes out to the West Coast, the Bing Crosby was probably an aggressive spot for him, but they went for it anyways. He did improve after that little bit of refreshing last time out. He's an interesting horse. Again, I'd probably be a little bit more apt to use him on the dirt, but again, you've mentioned the pedigree, Dan. There is maybe some things to like about him.
I'm a Gambler. The number 6 is Restricted Stakes placed going a mile. I wonder if this horse was a little keyed up with the addition of blinkers last time out. Going down the hill, he was a lot closer to the pace and he paid the price late. The blinkers are coming off. That experiment didn't work. I'm expecting him to revert to sort of a mid-pack racing style. And if he gets pace in a trip, maybe he can get a piece at the very least at a price.
Yeah, I think the pace will be decent enough for him. I do think the Eddie D, if you watch the replay, it's probably better as a replay than it looks on paper. I thought he was showing a little bit of progression in the stretch. And my one knock on him at this point, I wish you just would have seen a little bit more from him. He's had several tries here stateside in the United States. And, before that, he was a 9-time winner. He's a very impressive horse from a resume standpoint, but he just hasn't been able to get it done. But he certainly, fits this field from a numbers perspective.
Perhaps a price horse considers the 7. Lovesick Blues, a horse that ran 5/8 at Del Mar last time out, might not have gotten the best setup that day. You go back to his race in the Daytona back in May going down the hill. He just got beat a neck that day. He seems to have some tactical speed, and he has that race and a couple of others that will make him interesting if he can bring it on Saturday.
Yeah, that's the big question. Which version of Lovesick Blues is going to show up? Because, looking at some of these other races that he's been in, you go back to the Bertrando, the Daytona, those are really solid efforts. Are these waters deeper? Yes. But, as you've mentioned, he does have some tactical early foot. If you go down the page and you see some of the races that race on May 27th on the downhill, they went wickedly quick. And he was, not so far off of it, kind of making a move. I just don't know where I see him fitting in this race in terms of where he's going to be placed early on. He's not a Balknikov horse where he's going to be super far back, but he's not going to be in probably that top flight.
Perhaps some class concerns for the 8 Johnny Padres, a Calbred who earned a stakes placing in the California Flag, a restricted race 2 starts back going down the hill. Again, I'm not really going to fault his last race, a paceless event going 5/8, which is probably a little bit sharp for him, but this is a pretty sharp step up in class.
Yeah, I can't really make for a case for him here, Dan. I mean, look at his record at Santa Anita. He's a horse that's been sort of the minor player at best in most of those turf events. And I just think the waters are too deep here. He's a Calbred who, yes, he raced very well 2 starts back, but that was against Calbreds. And I think this is just a deeper field for him, and it's probably a tough task.
Bob Baffert will ship the 9 Tahoe Sunrise to the turf for the first time. This guy's never been off the board from 6 lifetime starts. We know American Pharaoh can be a very good sire of turf runners, but I look at the pedigree on the bottom and I just don't see it. The dam has foaled 1 turf winner, but all the classy horses in this female family have done it on the dirt.
Yeah, and I don't like to be a bad stat giver outer. I don't necessarily like to point those things out, but first time turf for Baffert, I'll wait and see any day. I just can't take a horse like this when you see Baffert is 4% with his first-time turfers.
Turn on the Jets is up next, and this horse exits a second place finish in the Stormy Liberal going 5/8 of a mile. He broke on top in this race, and I think they could have been a little bit more aggressive with him. Instead, they conceded to the favorite, and they run 1-2 all the way around the track. I won't be surprised if Turn on the Jets shows speed in this race. My question with him is sort of the opposite question I have with some of the others. Is this distance too far for him?
Yeah, that is the big question. I'm willing to maybe use him for a piece in here, but you wonder if 6.5 is something that he's going to be able to pull off, especially on the top spot. I think that's a tall ask, but at least when I look at his races, he is a consistent type through and through down the page since coming over from Ireland. Most of his races have been good. When I look at his form, at least he's steady. So I do think he actually deserves a try in this grade 2 event. But as you said, the distance, I don't know. It's going to be an interesting thing to watch unfold.
Olympic Runner is the other Cassie entrant in this race. He's a graded stakes winner going a 1-turn mile at Woodbine. I kind of like those middle distance horses going down the hill 6.5 at Santa Anita. While he did win going 5.5 3 starts back, that was against inferior competition at Colonial. I think that distance is too sharp for him when he runs against the bigger guns like they did last time out in the Woodford, where he was completely out sprinted by the time he got going. It was way too late in the game. So I'm hoping he can summon up some of his back class at this extra distance.
Little bit of the opposite story as we compare him to Turn on the Jets. I agree. I know he had that win at Colonial going 5.5, but I think when you go to his races before that, he was going a mile and a 16th. And as of recent, you can see those races have been a little short for him. So I think Olympic Runner is a case of 6.5 will really work well to his running style. He's the other Mark Cassian here, but I think both of Mark's horses, after what we've seen in their last couple performances, they sort of loom boldly in here.
Front run the Fed is not afraid to try tough competition. It seems he's always in a major stakes race. He does better at a little bit lesser competition, however, but his last race was his first off a bit of a layoff. Now he cuts back to 6.5, and occasionally he runs fast races.
Occasionally he does. His form's a little bit of occasional trips to the winner's circle. To me, it's tough because I look at his races, it's a little different. 5.5. He also has a 5.5 win at Colonial, but his last two, he just hasn't had that late punch that he's needed. And I understand one was at 6, a mile and a 16th. It looks like they're still trying to find his sweet spot as of late.
And if there's a scratch, Dancing Buck draws in, and he'll show speed shipping in from the East Coast, first time for Rick Dutrow Jr. Let's take a look at our top picks for the Joe Hernandez. We're hoping it stays on the turf because it does look like a pretty good betting race. We're going with Mark Casse, just different Mark Casse. You'll take Lucky's Score. He'll be running late. I'll take Olympic Runner. I'm hoping he's running late. He's disappointed me before.
Yeah, Lucky Score has disappointed me as well. So common themes here all the way around down. But for me, we showed the replay for the Near Arctic. I thought it was a really great race this year. It was really close in the end. And actually, when I go back to that race, there were a couple other horses that I liked, and they finished 4th or 5th. They weren't beaten by much in that race. And I thought last time out, he raced fine in the Breeders' Cup Mile. I don't think he did any, discredit or disservice to himself. And I think this is a great spot for him, and excited to see him on the downhill.
Ashley's going 110, 11, 4. I'm going 11, 1, 2, 10. Maybe try to get Balnikoff into the bottom of exotic wagers with a late kick. Should be a fun edition of the Joe Hernandez. Rain, rain, go away.